It was 2008 when this film was released, and the world had no idea what Marvel had been cooking up in their own independent studio. The birth of a new kind of hero, for all ages, and the beginning of one of the largest film franchises ever, the MCU. But everything was on the line for this one. After Marvel regained the rights of Iron Man in 2005, Marvel Studios sought to self-produce the film with a risky bank loan, and Paramount, not Disney, would be their distributors for the film. But why Iron Man? I can't answer this here quite yet, but honestly it makes sense as the sequels get produced. They're focusing on a specific group of heroes, the Avengers. This movie is not like the others. Clearly, when this film was released, much of the public, including myself, had no idea who Tony Stark is or what an Iron Man is, outside of the popular Black Sabbath heavy metal hit, Iron Man, or the grueling triathlon race, also known as Iron Man. But we all got to learn about him eventually. Tony Stark is a billionaire playboy and genius inventor whose company, Stark Industries, created by his father Howard, manufactures weapons of war. Tony has acquired the cute nickname of Merchant of Death, and after we get to see Tony walking around in his shoes, you begin to realize this guy's a dick, and he's supposed to be.
Ridiculous, I don't paint.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.
Tony and his friend Rhodey take a plane trip to Afghanistan to show the US military their newest death knell, the Jericho. After a successful demonstration, Tony decides to get into his own vehicle away from Rhodey. As Tony is trying to lighten up the mood with the soldiers, the convoy is attacked, killing all but Tony. But for Tony, one of his missiles is used against him, and it hits him with the shrapnel.
I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once.
Let's take a break right here. This film is taking a lot of back-breaking work, more than most superheroes at the time, and I'm willing to go out even on a streak today. These major studios never cared about bringing. Tony is a jerk and sells this whole character has to change. But on top of that, the location of this war, Afghanistan. Living in the 2000s, this war was never ending, and it always was something you had to think about. But to place this new superhero amidst it, to tether him to our world, is awesome. I also like the subtle comedy when it comes to the missile landing at Tony's feet. There's a classic little punch-in on the name. Tony awakens to find out he's been taken hostage by the terrorists known as the Ten Rings. Their intention is to force Tony to build them a new Jericho from scratch using his own products, in which they have amassed for this. Now, that shrapnel didn't just go away. Tony finds a unique device that's preventing the metal fragments from further killing him. This thing is bored into his chest, attached to a car battery. This is the handiwork of Dr. Jensen, a fellow captive of the Ten Rings as well. Tony doesn't trust Jensen at first, but as Tony begins to build something new, it piques the interest of the Doctor, and eventually they come together to build a miniature arc reactor.
That doesn't look like a Jericho missile.
That's because it's a miniaturized arc reactor.
The arc reactor will replace the device within Tony. This arc reactor is also key to powering all of Tony's future inventions and suits. This is Tony's intention. It's a suicide mission. Instead of building the missile, they will pretend to be working on it, as there are frequent checkups on their progress. The two will build the prototype for what will become the Iron Man suit. Eventually, the Ten Rings gets very impatient with their progress and threatens to kill Dr. Jensen if Tony doesn't build the Jericho in one day. So the guy just hammers away at metal. They build the suit and attack their captivators. Jensen tragically dies trying to help Tony.
Don't waste it. Don't waste your lives.
Parallels, man. God, when the MCU wants to be good, they're excellent. And then you have things like the Eternals. So, Tony escapes alone and survives the most unsurvivable crash landing ever. Afterwards, he is found by Rhodey and his squad. Tony returns home a little different. In fact, he's very much different. First, he wants a cheeseburger. I don't know how, but Burger King was once the official sponsor of the MCU. They appear several times within the first phase, and what's stranger than that, BK has never asked for the applause they deserve for sponsoring these movies. I'm not kidding. Feel however you want about their food. These guys actually came to the plate and they helped build this greater thing. Thank you, Burger King. And by the way, I love your breakfast croissant sandwiches. Can you bring the Yumbo back? The second thing, Tony wants to do an impromptu press conference to announce that Stark Industries will no longer produce weapons. This is when the real villain is revealed, Obadiah Stane, the co-owner of Stark Industries. Obi is not happy with Tony's seemingly unhinged plan of a volatile concoction to announce that Stark Industries will no longer manufacture weapons. For the rest of the film, you will see little of Obi, trying to solve what Tony did back in the deserts of Afghanistan, and the kid gets shady.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave!
Also, huge shout out to Jeff Bridges for taking on this role. Also for basically being a straight up indie project. How did they secure him? Great actor. Tony will be off trying to complete and master his newest version of the suit, the Mark III. There's a lot of great stuff dealing with Tony learning about his new responsibilities, if you will, mastering the techniques. There's also a lot of trial and error, but they are mostly funny. And then Tony thinks he's got a grip on it until he takes flight. His return to Afghanistan. This is not just one hell of a moment for this character to take action at this time, but it also demonstrates the sheer power of Iron Man possesses. Tony comes down as Iron Man to teach the Ten Rings a few lessons, and as he's doing this, he is actively saving people. With a closer lens, this man is carried away by the terrorists at gunpoint. His family is crying, his son is upset. Watch as Iron Man comes in. Bro. Public stance, and the unforgiving attitude of who gives a f about these scumbags. This is something I wanted to point out. While here in 2026, when I'm currently writing this review, times have changed, but I'm sorry to say this, but during 2008, when this film was released, the realism of Tony Stark being in the war of Afghanistan made him a public hero in reality, here in America. It wasn't a message of massacre, it's a message of intent to seek out the villains hiding, and that's what this scene effectively does. It made him a hero, the one willing to stand between the gun and the person who doesn't look like you, but is willing to try and help. And that's the things heroes are made of. Sadly, the real villain, Obadiah Stane, is saved for the last third of this movie, and the fight falls short of everything else. I can only describe it as somebody who worked on this picture said, okay, we did a lot of the groundwork. We laid out the map, we marked all the stops, and saw this thing still needs a conclusion. So Obi builds his own suit, which is much larger than most of the marks Tony will craft. It is also fun to see Ironmonger appear in reality, short-lived yet necessary for the conclusion, in which it's revealed, and I think it's way too late in the game, but Obi was the one who contacted the Ten Rings and ordered the hit on Tony. He's also the one selling them weapons under the table.
For 30 years I've been holding you up!
The conclusion of this tale is bewildering. Another top-tier moment for this film. Tony holds one more press conference at Stark Industries to sort out the previous issues with what happened the night the Ironmonger attacked. Agent Phil Coulson, who has been present, tells Tony to stick to these cards that they wrote. They gave him alibis. But Tony, being himself, goes off the cards, and he just tells the world,
I am Iron Man.
What a badass way to end a movie. And I took note that this wasn't about the triumphantness of Iron Man, but the rise of power with him. This story is the trial of taking on the responsibility of being a superhero. I did a review for Captain America: The First Avenger some time ago, and the story too had the same weight for its own character. There are many parallels within the MCU, but my favorite is the ones that come between Tony and Steve Rogers, brothers in arms. So why start with Iron Man? The popular belief is that Marvel was trying to compete with DC and trying to make another relatable character much like Batman. Think about it, Tony and Bruce share some of the same attributes. Rich, stupidly intelligent, and hot. They also use all of their facilities to build an arsenal to combat the evils in this world to save those who cannot stand up for themselves. Definition of a hero. But I did a little digging. Iron Man is one of Marvel's many attempts to recreate a character much like Batman. I mean, just look at Moon Knight. But for this movie, it had to do with a focus group. Children loved the fact that this real man is inside a cool suit. On top of that, Iron Man was never adapted into a live-action movie, and they had very few characters to work with. Think about Hulk, Spidey, Wolverine, all popular ones have been done. So this gave them a clean slate for building the MCU. Honestly, this movie is so fucking good. For being something that might have never panned out, a self-inflicted wound that pays dividends for the future years to come. 5 out of 5 stars. You cannot deny it, you shall not refute it. Just sit back and accept that the world will never be the same since this movie was released. The third act is the weakest point within the story, yet it still has a successful conclusion. Then Marvel did its thing. One last scene, waiting for you at the very end of the film. You gotta go through all the credits. Nick Fury enters Tony's living room, asking him to help with something called the Avengers Initiative. S.H.I.E.L.D. was here the whole time, baby. They didn't hide it, but damn, it's like a needle straight to the vein, and I'm here for it. That's it. I can't say much more other than this is a masterpiece. It is not the strongest superhero film. Just that same year, 2008, you got The Dark Knight, which most people say is a tour de force within the superhero movie realm. But I'll leave that question unanswered for another day. What I did not know before taking on this review was that this movie wasn't only financially successful, but it was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, won several other awards. But in 2022, the Library of Congress chose to preserve this film for its cultural significance. And then one weird thing to add on top of that. A coworker asked me what movie I was reviewing this week, and I told them Iron Man, in which they responded, "It's a classic." Bro, this movie's so old, yet it's still awesome. It's in the public zeitgeist as a classic. Marvel Studios, when you shine, it's the brightest light I've ever seen. That's it, that's my review. I know, I started to talk about Steve Rogers and Tony's parallels, but I'm gonna save that for my Avengers review for some other time later. But we have to build up to it, just like they did. So comments if you have any. I know Tony's a dick and a half, but he's still a badass in his own right. Like, comment, subscribe. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.